So, this is part of the series on the successes and failures of the ANC. Now, for one of these on the success parts, there are two parts: successes and failures. Um, let's talk about one of the successes. Part three: economic and social transformation policies. So, yeah, it's obvious that such a big change, like going from a authoritarian fascist state into a socialist liberal one, there will be some economic and social transformations. With the end of apartheid, the South African National Congress, or ANC, faced the monumental task of rebuilding a society characterized by deep economic and social inequality. The ANC's election campaign in 1994 was centered on the promise of a better life for all, a vision that entails not only political freedom but also economic and social justice, from housing to healthcare, education to infrastructure. The ANC-led government implementation various policies aimed at dismantling the legacy of apartheid and creating a more equitable society. This commitment to transformation has been the defining feature of the ANC governance. So yeah, like one of the things the ANC, well, I guess all political parties, what they were quite big on was a better life for all, or transformation, or just making promises. And yeah, like some of the promises were kept and some were not kept. One of the ANC's first major policy initiatives were the Reconstruction and Development Program, or RDP, introduced in 1994. The RDP aimed to address basic needs, promote economic growth, and rectify the inequalities entrenched by apartheid. Its goals included providing housing, clean water, electricity, healthcare, and education to communities that have been systematically deprived of these services. The RDP emphasized a people-centered approach to development, seeking to empower South Africans through direct access to essential services. Yeah, so the RDP was like a big, think of it as a like one of these 5-year plans or something that you would have like in the Soviet Union, or like Biden's Build Back Better plan, but just on a much bigger scale. And they had many like successes, including housing, clean water, electricity, and healthcare and education. Because for many people, these things simply didn't exist. Like you had some in the homelands, but um, like these days, there will be some people from South Africa viewing this podcast who live in slum areas. They will be able to view this using their cell phones because now they have electricity, which they weren't there before. Like, okay, yeah, maybe the electricity now is unaffordable, and maybe they have illegal electricity connections, which leads to other problems. But at least there's electricity. Like being South Africa is like pretty south in the southern hemisphere, so when it's winter, it's dark at 6 o'clock. So imagine like having to go to bed at 6 freaking because like there's no electricity, or you can use candles, I guess. That's a big problem though. There's this tradition or this thing, like because the candles are very weak, right? Like I don't know, those of you who watch stuff like Game of Thrones or like what's it like? What's that? I want to call it a woman's show. It's kind of a woman's show, not Southlander. Like that woman who can travel in time, and then she like travels to the Middle Ages or something. Like when she's in a castle, there's just like all of these lights from candles, but it's like 200 candles. Okay, like because it was royalty. It was the castles of royalty. Like a peasant back then would have one candle, like candles aren't for free. You have to pay for them. And a person, you need, like, to put it into context, you need pretty good eyesight to be able to read like when it's dark. Okay, like I can't see very well. Like I need good lighting. Yeah, it's like extra flats in my lights in my studio because I can't really. Well, yeah, like I can't see in the dark, but it goes down. Like the effectiveness. Um, when, when it's like at night, I kind of have to stick to the speed limit, drive like a grandfather because well, I just can't see that well. Now, yeah, it's even if you can see well, like studying with a candlelight, one candle in a shack, or an informal dwelling, it's not a lot of light. So what people do then is they have lanterns. Lanterns fueled by paraffin, or as I said, also South Africa is like pretty south in the southern hemisphere, so our winters can get. Look, it's not the freaking European winter, North European winter, but it can get pretty cold. And, just like a few degrees above zero sometimes. And then you need, like, um, unless you have safety blankets, but like most people just use like paraffin stoves and lamps because the lamp provides a huge, like much more light, so you can then actually read something. But those things, like, remember when you live in a shack or a very small dwelling, there's very limited room to move around. So they'd say there's a bed on, well, a mattress, or a mattress on the ground on this side and a mattress on the ground on that side. And then in the middle, you'll put the heater or the lantern. It's very easy to accidentally knock that thing over. And then, like, at the very least, the shack will burn down, the mattresses will catch fire, and even the slum may turn down. So in South Africa, you'll often see people, not that often, but often enough, you'll see people with like massive burn marks on their face and arms. Um, One way to see it, if it's summer, it's like 35 degrees Celsius outside, and someone will be wearing a baklava, doing some menial work, like, I don't know, like working in a garden or whatever. Like, the reason they're wearing the baklava is because they've got facial burns from one of these fires that started like from paraffin stuff. So the fact that the ANC gave people electricity is like a massive, massive thing. Clean water as well. Like, they, like in the slums, they put a lot of taps, so you can get like potable water. In South Africa, you can drink tap water. Okay, like now in the very modern age, like maybe the last 10, 15 years, now and then there's a breakdown in the water system and you may get cholera, but it's very seldom. Like, if I go home, like, I just drink tap water. It's like bottles are a waste. So we like potable water is a great thing from the tap. Healthcare, certain sectors, black people of population, African black people of population didn't have healthcare at all. Okay, like, so now you have like maternity wards, you have MRI scans, like not a lot. It's not like millions of MRI machines in South Africa, but like or devices, like, but there are some, even if there was just one is better than zero, and there isn't just one, there's a couple. Education was very bad. Like, one of the things that apartheid did, um, education is still bad, but I'm going to make another video about that, like post-democracy education. But one of the aims of the apartheid government was to like stupefy or retard the African population by keeping them out of law, especially law. medicine, engineering, anything that like a services based or a higher based skill that can like empower you. Like keeping the population like in vocational centers if you get to be in a vocational center. Because like if you're a farm worker, you don't need to go to a vocational center. If you're a house cleaner, you don't need to go to a vocational center. It's like it's manual work anyone can do. And they created education which was more on a international level, where now like a literacy drive in general, where people can now actually become like literate, where they like never used to be. Through the RDP, Reconstruction and Development Program, the ANC achieved significant progress in housing. By 2000, the year 2000, the government had built over 1 million low-cost homes, providing shelter to millions of people who had previously lived in informal settlements or inadequate housing. The provision of housing under the RDP not only improved living conditions but also restored dignity to those who had been marginalized by apartheid's discriminatory policies. For many South Africans, home ownership symbolized a fresh start and a tangible outcome of the ANC's vision for a fairer society. Yeah, so this goes without saying, like going from a shack into a house with bricks and mortar is like, that's like that's 1,000% upgrade. There can be weather events in South Africa, like severe flooding or whatever, or severe rainstorms. By the way, we get fantastic rainstorms. Usually, if you go to South Africa, go in summer, and experience some of our rainstorms. Like, okay, maybe it's changing now with global warming, but it's this big raindrops. It's sudden. It rains over 1.5 hours. There's like lightning everywhere, like thunder and lightning. It's spectacular, and it's wonderful and awesome if you've got good shelter. If you live in a slum, it's not so nice. In any case, you can imagine living in a proper house is a massive upgrade, and the government built 1 million. Okay, 1 million. It's not a small amount. Okay, 5 million would have been better, but 1 million is better than zero. One problem though, some of these houses weren't built by using great standards. So some of them got cracks, luckily South Africa's not an earthquake prone zone, but they weren't the best houses. Let's put it that way. Some of them, because obviously it's not one contractor who built 1 million homes. It was many, many different contractors. So it depended on the contractor. So 1 million homes by the year 2000, although the population's always growing. There's a lot of work to be done before South Africa can be on a Chinese level where we say everyone has a home. And everyone deserves a home, by the way. In no country, people should live in a shack or a slum or a trailer park or, in the bush or whatever. The RDP has also made strides in electrification and water access. In 1994, only 36% of South African households had access to electricity. Only 36. Through the RDP and subsequent programs, the ANC expanded electrification efforts to rural and previously underserved areas, reaching over 85% of households by 2016. Similarly, the ANC-led government made substantial progress in improving access to clean water. By 2015, around 90% of households had access to improved water resources, a significant achievement in promoting public health and quality of life. So, okay, some of these numbers will be disputed, but only in the sense that in certain areas, the water quality won't be the same exactly everywhere. The quality and education of a water engineer may vary, for example, and one day he may not chlorinate the water. Another day the chlorinator may break down. Other people, like another day, like there may be a massive drought. So that's the super drought prone. It's probably the only, yeah, it's the only um, massive like natural catastrophes that can hit South Africa, apart from like viruses. But like everything else, like we're resistant to it because we don't have it. Like the Earth, for example, the one of the thickest cores, the most stablest Earth cores is the African shelf, and we are basically on that, in the middle of that. So it's very, very stable. That's why you don't really get mountains in South Africa because of like the lack of core movement. So we don't have earthquakes, for example, but droughts are a big thing, especially because like we are next to the cold Atlantic. And yeah, like the weather, like the cold Atlantic, on the east we have the warm Indian Ocean, but there's this mountain the air has to pass over called the Drakensberg. It's a lowish mountain, but okay, it's more, it's less of a mountain and more of a ridge. So the moist air have to cross the ridge. That's why the eastern province called KwaZulu Natal is more green. Like they've got more water because the like that area captures more water, and then the excess have to go across into the rest of the country. And there can be droughts, and when there's massive droughts, obviously we have a lot of dams, we have water reservoirs. But then, like, let's say you start using before the next rain season, you're down to the last 10% of water, and well, yeah, it's going to be mud and there may be some bugs in it, so that will be served. Those are exceptions, though. Like wherever I've been in South Africa and I've been around, I drank tap water up until now, like 2024. I have had potable tap water. I do not drink bottled water. Uh, I drank bottled water in Bolivia because I went to Bolivia because it looked it just I went to La Paz and it looked super dodgy, and I was like, look, I'm not going to drink tap water here. Um, and I went to Cuba and I was foolish enough to not drink to drink the tap water, and I got cholera. I lost like 10 kilograms. It was like, yeah, I was kind of shocked to the body. But yeah, the ANC created potable water where there was none. In addition to addressing basic needs, the ANC recognized the need for economic transformation. Under apartheid, economic growth was concentrated in the hands of a small, primarily white elite, leaving the black majority excluded from meaningful participation in the economy. To address this disparity, the ANC introduced Black Economic Empowerment, or BEE, policies aimed at redistributing wealth and opportunities. BEE sought to promote black ownership of businesses, supporting black entrepreneurs, and increase representation of marginalized groups in key sectors of the economy. BEE was later expanded into broad-based black economic power, or triple BEE, to ensure that the economic empowerment reached a wider range of South Africans, including women, people with disabilities, and those in rural areas. While BEE and triple BEE faced some criticisms and challenges, they represent an important step in addressing the economic imbalances created by apartheid. The policies sought to create a more inclusive economy where all South Africans could have a stake in the nation's prosperity. So yeah, like this BEE, that's what do you call it? The Americans would refer to as like DEI. No, you don't really have that in the United States. Like you can call it. It's also not the same as affirmative action because remember, affirmative action is only job based. It's based on like a job, and maybe we will get to affirmative action. Or I'm going to talk about, yeah, in this video I'll talk about affirmative action, but now I'm going to talk about affirmative action now. I'm just going let me just talk about BE and triple BE first. Like so, if you remember, I think it was video. Yeah, was it the last video? I think it was the last video. Yeah, they implemented like RDP, okay, redistribution. No, what was uh, redistribution and development program. That was like the first economic program. Then they brought in BEE. BEE helped quite a bit, but like for the first time with BEE, you started seeing like black people in offices. Before that, they were like cleaners, like they were the guy cleaning or the guy doing bringing in office supplies or whatever, like manual laborers. With BE for the first time, not many, but some. You started seeing black faces like in offices wearing suits and ties, like doing white collar work. Those who had those who had the education, who were lucky enough to receive it. Triple BE, like oh yes, and BE also created some business opportunities for black people, like giving some like help to black companies, black owned companies. Triple BE took it a bit further, where like as they said in the script, where you essentially like you include like let's say disabled people and women, but also it gave like more support, even more support to black owned companies, like either black owned or majority black owned companies. You can still have white people in it, but like most of the ownership structure is like supposed to be white. And then they would get like preferential treatment if there's a government project. Now, this helped a lot of black people. Like, I have a friend who became tremendously rich. In his defense, he's an outlier. I mean, he's an outlier in the sense that he's like Bill Gates or Elon Musk. He's one of those people who's just different than the rest of us. He can go and get something done. But he also admitted that he was helped by Triple BE. And yeah, that guy's like spectacularly rich. I'm happy for him. But the problem is that it created some of these people. The best example would probably be Patrice Motsepe. Was like a lot of these people were small business people during apartheid, who just got along with their businesses. But like now that the system was open, now that the system prefers you, like not only does it prefer you, you have the expertise and you have some connections. Now you're getting even more connections because the government favors you. And like, let's say a mine gets sold. Now remember, even although it's a private sale, okay, uh, let's say Anglo American, which is a multinational, sells the mine on the open market. It's a private sale. But remember, the open market is within South Africa, so it has to adhere to South African laws. One of the new laws would be the Triple BE. So, like Anglo American, they're not forced to sell to these people, but let's say the mining license can only be given to a black company. Okay, for example, is one of the ways you can do it. So that leaves like Anglo American with no choice but to sell to a company which can get the license, which happens to be a black owned, majority owned company. In this case, Rainbow Minerals, Patrice Motsepe's company. And well, good on him, I guess. Makes a lot of money, and once again, hardworking businessman. He deserves it. But you get like this black bourgeois, and as they say, I agree, and I also don't agree about trickle down economics. Like, but I mean, it's not like this guy is going to just give away his money to poor black people, like all of it. He may be a philanthropist, like, Bill Gates is a philanthropist, or Jeff Bezos is a philanthropist, or whatever. But so there will be, to not be look like this cutthroat person in the media, like he will do some stuff, but he's not going to give like $1,000 to 10,000 people just like that. Just not how these people remain rich. To the defense of rich people is, yes, you cannot. Abraham Lincoln said it. You can't like enrich the poor by impoverishing the rich, because remember, these rich people, most are like, I know you get some like silver spoon people, but the silver spoon people, or like as we call it in South Africa, the trust fund babies, they usually just lose the money and then the money goes back into the economy. So um, the business people internationally are usually the most competent people. I know there's some rotten business people, like let's say oligarchs in Russia. Like some of them are very good and competent people, and some are just rotten. Ukraine, by the way, as well. But yeah, like money is best handled by competent people, by hardworking people, by outliers, someone who have instinct, someone who take risks, like someone who's creative, someone who's like good at negotiating, a fighter or something. Like sounds a bit like what Trump said. I watched that movie about Trump, The Apprentice. Yeah, it was such a strange movie. Like, but in any case, from like as Trump said in that movie, like you have to be a fighter. Like those people are fighters to an extent. They're not necessarily brutal, but like this friend of mine, for example, which I spoke about, once I went with him to a luxury vehicle place, and he got a discount. I can't remember what discount he got, but he got quite a bit of a discount, like maybe 5% or 10%, which the dealership didn't want to give him. And he used something called disruptive, like negotiating. And these people, like, it's not something he knew when he was like 18 years old, but because of his nature, because he's a businessman, like he would be interested in business stuff. So he's going to read business books. Not only will he read business books, remember, I can read a business book and I won't be as good as him. Why? Because remember, I don't have the aptitude. He's got the aptitude. Like, so he will remember all of these things in the book. Like, he doesn't need to read the book twice. Also, like, he can immediately apply that information. Not all of us can apply. If I read a book, what will not be my aptitude? Engineering. Like if I read an engineering book, I'll have to read it several times to understand it. And then I can understand it, but I have to read it a couple of times. And even after I've done this, I would still not appreciate it. Like I don't really care how information is modulated, like on a signal modulator, and sent with sinus waves and then demodulated on the other side. Like, as long as it's done for me using the internet does it by itself, I'm happy. So long story short, like the effect though with this triple BE was that you get a bourgeoisie or a bourgeois movement. Some black people, very rich black people, join a larger group of also of white people who are already rich, and some Indian rich people, and some mixed ethnicity rich people. I know like an Indian South African also who's spectacularly rich, but his aptitude. He was like this from like the first day I met him at university. You could just see this guy's a visionary. It's not like that. Those people don't fall out of trees. Like you're born like that. But in any case, in South Africa, you have this inequality. between the bourgeoisie and the worker class, proletariat. Now, look, I'm not a communist. I don't believe in all this stuff, but it's not healthy to have such a huge disparity of wealth for many reasons. Like the magazine The Economist predicted that we're 50 years late for the next French Revolution, like French style revolution globally, because of disparity. Like even in a country like China, there's massive disparity. Um, so the bottom line is the triple BE. Look, it's better to have 1,000 rich black business people in South Africa than zero. No one can argue that. But bottom line is like it didn't like maybe it would have been better to help 10 million or 5 million middle class black people. But nonetheless, we are taking triple BE as an ANC success. Like because it did provide results. Okay, so we'll take that as a success. I'm just quickly going to say something about affirmative action. Affirmative action can also be taken as a success. It can be taken as a failure as well. We'll talk about that in a different video, but I'm just going to talk about it as a success in this video. And yeah, like where you would not see a black woman, where you would not see a disabled person. Now you can see them. Now they're visible. Okay, like when I was like young, when I was like a boy, for example, if you're in a wheelchair, it would be like impossible to enter a building. So you can't work in that building. Now there are wheelchair ramps, and it's because of affirmative action. Like and these people can rise into positions. It was quite interesting. A couple of years ago, a woman won a court case in the constitutional court with regards to she was bipolar or is still bipolar. It didn't go away because it can't be it can't be cured. It can just be managed with medicine. And she didn't get promoted, and she was like told it's because you're bipolar. And then she went to the constitutional court. And she went to one court that was obviously like either appealed or thrown out, but it went in the end. It went to the constitutional court because it broke the constitution of South Africa because like some of this triple B is kind of included in it. To an extent. If you're a constitutional law expert of South Africa, please let us know how triple BE fits into the constitution. What's like because I don't know a lot about the constitution. When I was at school, we all got like a copy of the constitution, and I didn't read it. Like, so I know the basics. Like everyone knows the basics. So she won the case, the bipolar woman, because you cannot discriminate against anyone in South Africa based on any like disability, religion, skin color, whatever. You can't like if a Muslim guy needs to pray during they've got these set times, right, that you're supposed to pray. Even although if there's a meeting going on, you have to let him or her pray. It's constitutional, which I think is a very good thing. And yeah, it's basically the absence of, let's say, female faces of color, that disappeared. And now that you have, let's say, you can go to a bank, or you can go to a doctor, you can get like a black female doctor, and it's good. Like I feel also staying on in the area of female doctors. I feel female doctors are better. I feel they've got more empathy and understanding. So I've been to a couple of black doctors, women doctors, and they were very good, better than white male doctors. Not because they're black, but because they're women. Like women doctors are always better. Like they've got more empathy. Like a male doctor will tell you like, yeah, you got sick, it's your own fault because you smoked, you're stupid. A female doctor will be like, oh, I'm so sorry you're sick, like, oh, sir, you're like smoking, maybe you should quit that, can you please do that for me? That's what a female will say, and then you're like more likely to do what the female tells you because they have empathy. So it's good to have diversity, right? Like, if you read modern business books as well, modern business books are very pro diversity because, like, having different views in an organization is very good. Getting now, we're going to talk about HIV. The ANC's social transformation policies also placed a strong emphasis on healthcare. In the early years of democracy, South Africa faced a growing HIV/AIDS pandemic that posed a severe threat to public health and economic stability. Although initial responses to the epidemic were criticized for delays, the ANC eventually implemented a comprehensive HIV/AIDS program, including widespread access to antiretroviral therapy or ART. By 2010, South Africa had one of the largest ART programs in the world, significantly improving life expectancy and reducing mother to child transmissions of HIV. The expansion of ART saved millions of lives, transforming the trajectory of HIV/AIDS crisis in South Africa. Um, okay, the HIV thing is, I'm not going to call it a success, I'm going to call it a kind of a success. I structured the script to be balanced. To have like a truth because there's a truth in everything. But there were like some problems with the AIDS implementation initially, and still, like some people can't get their drugs on time and they have to ration. But the government did try, and like at one stage, I remember we and India. It was only South Africa and India went to great lengths internationally to tell the EU and the Americans your patenting of HIV drugs is unacceptable. Like we know it's your intellectual property, but millions of our people are dying, and it's absolutely inhumane to keep this a secret. And later they did release the patents, and then we started making our own drugs because making these drugs are not rocket science. And we also imported from India, but it also we could import from India because India got the patent later, and then India could help us. Um, let's get to education. Education was another central pillar of the ANC's transformation agenda. Recognizing that education is essential for economic empowerment and social mobility, the ANC prioritized improving access to quality education for all South Africans. The introduction of free primary education aimed to ensure that children from low-income families could attend school without financial barriers. Enrollment in primary education rose dramatically, and literacy rates improved, reflecting the impact of the ANC's education policies. So, yes, I'm mixed on. Um, Look, some education is better than zero education. And like trying to teach someone maths is better than not trying at all. So the ANC did succeed in that. One of the, you can see this, for example, from social media. It's like people will be active on social media and they will make a lot of spelling mistakes, but it becomes clear that they can communicate and they can communicate well, and they can apply logic. So there were some successes. They created these things called TFET colleges, which is like a vocational college, and that was like for people who could either not afford university or people who just, like they were just not smart enough to go for university in any case. But then, like a TVET college would like enable you to, let's say, become an electrician or a truck driver. So you have some education, you have some skills. It's not nearly broad enough. One of the biggest failures was that, and still is, and it's not just South African problem, it's a global problem, is we don't teach people how to be entrepreneurs, to chase their passion and chase their meaningful purpose in life, their meaning of the life and their purpose in life, and then to make money from that. We don't teach that, which is a huge problem. And ANC then obviously didn't do it either. Um, but there was, there was an attempt, and a lot of it did work. The ANC also undertook efforts to make higher education more accessible through student financial programs like the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, or NSFAS. The ANC enabled thousands of students from disadvantaged backgrounds to attend university. While challenges around funding and quality remained, the ANC's investment in education helped produce a new generation of South Africans equipped with skills needed for the country's evolving economy. Yeah, so this NSFAS thing was created, and it was a good instrument, or it is a good instrument. I believe it still exists. It doesn't go broad enough though. Like there was a lot of protests against it. It's called the Fees Must Fall protests. But when it started, it was good because like now you're helping people that's never been helped. Like you're giving people entry in university who's never had that opportunity. It's one of the first steps of breaking cyclical poverty, which is like your usual suspects of countries, as I call them. They are usually the usual suspects because they exhibit like cyclical poverty. And like this NSFAS program is like an attempt to break out of it. So it lacks funding still to this day, but it's better than nothing. Like we are investing tax money in it, some tax money, and it's a good thing. The ANC's policies on infrastructure development were another major driver for transformation. Recognizing the need for a modern, interconnected economy, the ANC invested in various infrastructure projects, from roads to telecommunications. Projects like the Gautrain high-speed rail system and the expansion of national highways improved connectivity and supported economic growth. The ANC's investment in infrastructure not only facilitated trade and businesses, but also created jobs and improved access to services, especially for rural communities. Um, yeah, so some infrastructure was built under the ANC, like especially in areas which has never had it. The problem, though, is like less attention was given to existing infrastructure. So, in many cases, the existing infrastructure was kind of neglected, which is a pity because, like, well, once these things, like, for example, I'm not a structural engineer, but like, if you look at concrete, for example, if you don't paint concrete or like seal it up often enough, water will start seeping into it. Once the water seeps into it, it starts reaching the bars, the metal bars inside the concrete, which will start to rust, and the rust will start expanding. As the rust expands, the cracks get bigger, more water gets in, it weakens, it erodes, corrodes the metal, and the building becomes too unsafe to use, or it can reach the point of no repair, or that maintenance is no longer possible. There's many. It's like it's like 150. The last number I heard, which is probably an old number, if you're if you know these things, please comment and tell us the real number. The last number I heard was like 150 buildings, big buildings in Johannesburg that had serious issues, like museums, for example. Like, which museum was it? Like, a certain museum got some serious water damage and it kind of destroyed freaking huge amount of painting. That's a big problem. However, we're still on the success areas of the ANC. Look, I'm saying I shouldn't have done the sarcastic quote success thingy because look, the ANC has had successes. They were in power for 30 years. That's a fact. People aren't retarded. They will vote for something which they believe is a good thing. Period. That's why Donald Trump got elected because people believe it's a good thing, and it's their right. Like people can do and think and vote for what they believe is in their best interest. So yeah, we had some new infrastructure. The Gautrain train was wonderful. Is wonderful. I haven't been in the Gautrain train on the Gautrain train in years because I've been abroad for so long. But like the Gautrain, train, yeah, geez, that thing's really cool. It's a high-speed train. It basically it's I believe it's domestically built. The carriages were imported, but like the rail, like most of the railway engineering infrastructure was built locally. And the line is unfortunately not as long. I believe it's like 75 kilometers or something like that, maybe 100. And it serves a very small amount of people, but it's a spectacular train. It's really nice. Um, then another thing I would like to mention while we're here on infrastructure is the 2010 World Cup. Any of you football fans will be intimately familiar with it, unless you're too young. But like, unless you're like 20 years old now, 15 years old, you will not like. My videos are not meant for children, by the way. So if you're under 18, you're not supposed to watch it. Although I guess I can't stop you if you like. Just click yes, I am 18 on your YouTube prompt or your YouTube profile. But like the 2018, I try not to curse like I normally curse. I try not to blaspheme, like, or use other inappropriate language. If I do it, please point it out for me so I can fix it. But okay, essentially, and I'm sorry if I did, by the way. But oh yes, the World Cup. The 2010 World Cup was spectacular. We built, or the ANC or the government built a lot of new stadiums. The getting the World Cup by itself was a very difficult process. Like we were bidding against, just getting for Africa to get it was difficult, and then once Africa got it, like bidding the bid against Morocco was very difficult because the Europeans, for proximity's sake, the European federations was very powerful by the way as well, wanted it to be Morocco. Apparently, we paid a bribe to the soccer officials, and then they gave it to South Africa. But nonetheless, even although there was a bribe paid, we got to have the bid, and it was a super successful bid. I went to watch some games, and it was really cool. Like, yeah, there was like bathrooms everywhere. Like you had no issue like accessing a bathroom. There was like basically no lines for the bathrooms. You could buy like drinks, like beer and soft drinks everywhere. Like food was like readily available. The view, yeah, everything was so near, and security was pretty good as well. So it was like a big success. Unfortunately, one of the stadiums was a white elephant. It turned into a white elephant, but the 2010, the legacy and the infrastructure of the 2010 World Cups much better than, for example, the Olympics use was in Brazil. The Olympics in Brazil, like so many of those infrastructure built went into disrepair and disuse. Um, One of the ANC's most ambitious infrastructure initiatives was its commitment to rural development. Under apartheid, rural areas, particularly in the former homelands, were neglected and deprived of basic services. The ANC's rural development programs aim to improve access to water, sanitation, electricity, and transportation in these areas. By connecting rural communities to essential services, the ANC helped to bridge the gap between urban and rural living standards, contributing to a more balanced national development. Okay, they did do a lot for the rural areas, but also maybe not enough. And these days, like some of it's in serious disrepair. The other day, this was this iconic hotel that had to close down because the road leading to so there was this iconic hotel in the Eastern Cape province. It had to close down because of the road there was just too dodgy. Even apparently, even if you had a 4x4, you had to be careful. So, they had to close the hotel because the road kind of stopped existing. Um, Through these economic and social transformation policies, the ANC made significant strides in addressing the legacy of apartheid and building a foundation for a more just and inclusive society. While challenges and criticisms arose over time, the ANC's efforts to expand access to housing, healthcare, education, and economic opportunities reflect its commitment to social justice and equality. These policies transformed the lives of millions of South Africans, particularly those who have been marginalized by apartheid, and laid out the groundwork for a society where everyone could aspire for a better future. So this was the area of economics. I would also like to add the fact, um, I don't know the numbers, but we had a very high growth rate post apartheid up until the years of Jacob Zuma, the presidency of Jacob Zuma, where things began to go pear shaped. Um, Two reasons. Okay, I'm first going to start for the reason that the economy started to grow. Is the apartheid government wasn't really as efficient as many people believed it was. That's like you know, um, that's kind of fake history. Like if you're going to structure or engineer a society to work in this weird, inefficient way where you kind of try to keep one area, like the majority of the population, uneducated, restrict their movement, the economy won't grow. Right? Like, I don't believe in total deregulation, but I believe in a lot of, freedom for businesses to move and to grow. Except like for the environment should be tightly controlled. Not unnecessarily, of course, but when there's danger of reasonable danger of polluting a river, then you have to regulate that business, make sure it runs well. Um, like, but for example, over-regulation would be typically the standard cemented policies of the apartheid government where, okay, you can't freely move around, you can't get a good education, you can't start a business in these areas. Now suddenly you take 70-80% of the population out of the game. Okay. So it basically retards the economy. So I know at one stage we had 8% economic growth per year. That was the same period that the gold price was the highest in global history. like for a very, very long time. So, um, and the economy was growing at that percentage because the population, the labor the labor cost was very low. The labor cost was very low because, like, for black people to work in a white area, the mines were white areas, you had to sign away a lot of your rights. Like the right, for example, to form a union. If there's no union, you can get any low salary that the company wishes to pay you. So essentially, yeah, like basically the economy was slow for that reason, and then yeah, there was sanctions. There was a lot of sanctions against apartheid for obvious reasons, and then with the new government of Nelson Mandela, that fell away, and the economy of South Africa experienced significant growth until the 2008 financial crisis. The commodity bubble burst and the ascendancy of Jacob Zuma, where we started to get capital flight. But for a very long time, under the presidencies of Nelson Mandela and Thabo Mbeki, South Africa did very well. And you can't take that away from the ANC. You can't. These are just facts. I'm not saying it was a fairy tale time. I am not saying that at all. And there's like a lot of evidence that it wasn't a fairy tale time. But you cannot deny like the economic growth between the years of 1994 and the year up until the year 2000. That's all for now. The next video will be about healthcare achievements. Thank you.